How you doing? I'm Paul Biancardi, and I'm chopping it up with my man Buck.
We're here with Paul Biancardi on Chopping It Up with Buck. This episode has been good. Coach B and I used to sit in the ESPN studio and just talk ball. He knew I loved basketball, but he loved football just as much as I love basketball. So we've been trying to do this for a while. Glad to have you on. How you been, man?
Buck, I've been great, and it's so good to see you and hear your voice. Yeah. And I can't wait to chop it up with you.
See, you're already doing the commercial for us from the very beginning. So I want to just dive right into it. You grew up with a single mom. She worked multiple jobs. Mine did the same thing too. You played in the CYO league. I was one of those guys growing up as Catholic and played in CYO ball, but transitioned to Pop Warner and everything else. Tell us about your experience growing up in Boston and how that was when your mom and dad eventually divorced when you were 7. All those things that happened for you as a young kid.
It was a lot, and basketball was the saving grace because it was the sport that I ended up falling in love with. As a young kid growing up in the city of Boston, I played all sports. Baseball, I tried football, but that didn't last long. We would play a game called street hockey, and I say street hockey because not everybody knows what street hockey is. It's hockey in sneakers with an orange ball that's really hard and plastic. And so we played street hockey, we played baseball, football. I'd play handball. That means you just got a little ball and you whack it against the wall. It's kind of like racket ball without the racket.
I got you.
And so those are the sports you played because, you did it in a community setting. And then basketball was the last sport that I decided to play, and it was the one that I fell in love with. So I started playing hoops at about 13 years old. But you mentioned that my family situation, as bad as it was back then, my mother never made it seem like it was all that bad. We didn't have anything, but she always made me feel like I had what I needed when I look back and think about that. So she did work multiple jobs, and her and my dad just, they didn't get along, so they split. Yeah. So that kind of left me just playing sports, which really saved me. And I had some great friends, and I had a sister who was older. So, I always say the zip code I came from, I should have never got out of there. It was a part of Boston that was Italian heavy, and back then in Boston, all the different towns had their own ethnicity. You had the black neighborhoods, you had the Hispanic neighborhoods, you had the Italian neighborhoods, you had the Irish neighborhoods. It was very territorial back then.
Well, Coach, you talked about your mom having a lot of love. Mine was the same way. She never turned me against my father, who, they divorced when I was about 11 or 12. So I always found that fascinating, mother's strength. And I look at it from a black woman's perspective, you from an Italian mother perspective, but there's still that certain level of love. But the thing is, keeping us from getting into those streets, because I know that's a big thing when I look at some of the guys, when I go back home, probably for you the same way. Sports kept me away from that. How did that do that for you as well?
Oh, real easy. I mean, I played outdoors, right? Everything was outdoors, indoors. And some of my friends would not, they didn't pick up basketball. They played other sports, and some of them decided not to play sports. So if you're not playing sports, back in the late 70s, early 80s, then what are you doing? You're hanging out. If you're hanging out, there's going to be things happening that shouldn't be happening at 18, 19, 20 years old. So being on the basketball court and then going home after helped me avoid those situations early on, 13, 14, 15, 16, as I mentioned, up to 18, 19. It gave me a goal to do something on a daily basis. And like I said, I fell in love with basketball, and I'm still loving it today, and we're talking about it. So it's been my saving grace in my life beside, my faith and my family.
Well, you love football too, so I'm sure you played all sports growing up, football, basketball, street hockey. What was it about the game of basketball that got you so entranced and in love with the competition, the just all the X's and O's? Because when you coach, you have to be dialed in, but when you recruit, you have to be dialed in. When you're learning the game of basketball, what was it about the game of basketball that you just said, I love this game?
You know, when I just went to the court and shot the ball, when I saw the ball go through the net, it excited me. So I wanted to do it again and again and again. And so you sit there and you shoot for hours. And every time you miss a shot, you want to go back and make the next one, and you move around on different spots. And I used to play that. You remember growing up, that hot shot game? Hot spot. You shoot from, the block, the first line, the second line, the elbows, and you get points for each spot. So, I challenged myself on the court, but it was the fact of making a shot and then wanting to do that again the next day. Then eventually I started to play the game, not just shoot. And, I started to love it even more. And I guess I became pretty good at it at a young age. And anytime you're good at something, I think it makes you want to come back and try it more. So I love to see the ball go in the net. I enjoyed playing. And then I became, decent at it.
Yeah. The couple of things that struck me and just kind of doing some research about you, you said you didn't really get to play till your senior year, like in college. You played you played in high school. You walked on at Salem, is it Salem State or Salem College? And Salem State. Tom Thibodeau was a senior when you were a freshman, but you got hurt. You just kept coming back. Tell us about that, because I love the stick-to-itiveness and all the things that you had to do to get to become a senior captain. I think people just see that and they don't realize all the struggles that you had to go to get to that point.
Yeah, it really is, or was. I'm a freshman at Salem State. I come out of high school at a local Catholic high school called Pope John. I was the captain of the team. I was a starter, but I was an average player on an average high school team. So I wanted to get recruited so bad, right? And I laugh when I say that, because you and I did Recruiting Nation for like a decade at ESPN, and all I wanted to do was get recruited out of high school. Didn't happen, so I decided to go to Salem State and be a walk-on. Well, as you know, when you're a walk-on, you invite yourself to the party, right? You invite yourself to tryouts. And so I got cut, and I was devastated, Buck, when I got cut. I mean, I don't know if depressed is the right word, but back then I felt it, because it's what I wanted my whole life, and it didn't happen. So, but the great trait that I did have was persistency. So I decided to dedicate, the whole year to getting in better shape, becoming a better player, change my body. So I try out the second year, and in tryouts, I come down on someone's foot, break my ankle.
Oh man.
So I'm 0 for 2. Meanwhile, financially, I'm poor and broke. So my mother's telling me, you got to get a job. What's this basketball stuff? And I says, Mom, I gotta make this team. That's my goal. Yeah. And, she didn't understand. She's working 2 jobs, and she wanted me to work. And I did work odd jobs, but I never got a full-time job, because my full-time job was basketball. I'd play it morning, noon, and night. So finally, my third year, I make the team. And then in my senior year, Tom Thibodeau is the head coach. And I think he just valued what I brought to the team, which was, Buck, I brought a great passion. I brought an intensity level that nobody else would have a greater level of intensity than I would. That was my goal. I became a smart player. I developed a basketball IQ. I knew practice was my games. And so I treated it that way. So I think I brought the team a work ethic. I brought the team an intensity level. I was a great teammate, not just in practice. I try to make you better if I went against you. I didn't try to make you look good because you were the starter. I didn't try to hook up my boy. I tried to make you better.
Defense, like,
no. I would harass you in practice, and then I'd love you, and I'd love you after practice. And I was a good teammate. I knew my role. I played it well, and it was such a fulfilling moment for me when I was named captain of the team, because I had not my wildest dreams that I ever think I'd be a captain in college, but my leadership, intensity, and persistency, and being a great teammate led to those things that Tom Thibodeau value back then, and now look where he is in the NBA. So he put a premium on the traits, and that's how I made it.
Well, I'm always fascinated, too, about the progression afterwards. I know you were GA, but when you were a coach at the 8th grade CYO team, I mean, you said you probably had the most fun doing that. I mean, I know the GA role, getting you to Boston College. You coach with some guys like Mike Jarvis, Rick Majerus. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you coached and played for. But tell us about your experience coaching 8th grade CYO basketball, because I've done that before. I got a daughter and my son, and CYO basketball is one of the most competitive, especially in a town like Boston or wherever you were living at the time. Those parents get after you. Tell us about your experience as a CYO basketball coach.
Well, I'm playing high school ball. When I played high school ball at Pope John, I knew I wanted to coach. Yeah. So what I did on Saturdays, because we would have Saturdays off, is I would coach CYO basketball. And we practiced once a week, and then we played on Saturdays. And you're right, it was really competitive. And, where I grew up, it was like in my Italian district, it would be like, Saint Vinny or Saint whatever we were, right? We'd go play Saint Rita, Saint Mark, and all these different towns, and it was very competitive. And you would think it was high school ball, but it was my first time coaching, and I'll tell you what, man, I got hooked. It was like a drug. I couldn't stop. I love being with kids. I love coaching them during the game. I love trying to see if I can make them as competitive as I was, try to teach them the game, develop a bond between them, because I'm a senior in high school and they're 8th grade. So it was a lot of fun, and it's the first time I've ever had a chance to coach a team. And it's where every coach should start, is at the lowest level, because when you start at the bottom, I started at the bottom in my playing career and in my coaching career. And I'll just give you a side bit about Tom Thibodeau. Everybody says he's this great coach, right? He can take players and make them better. But, Buck, I didn't make the NBA, so he can't be that good of a coach.
Who was the father figure or the coach that stepped in? Because generally, that's who our influences are. It's either going to be the street, it's going to be the guy that you see on the corner, it's going to be somebody. But who was that coach for you that made a big difference?
You're 100% right. It's who's ever in your life. So if you're playing ball, it's your coach. Mm-hmm. So before high school, I played CYO ball at the local church called St. Lazarus. And so my CYO coach, I remember his name to this day, Vinny Capozzi, another Paisan. And, Vinny was our coach, and you did what Vinny said. And Vinny was he was a tall guy. He was 6'6". And he played small college ball, and he was my coach in the 7th and 8th grade. And then as I went into high school, I took over the team. And then my high school coach was so instrumental because, as you said, you're void of a male figure in your life. So I spent the most time in basketball. So my high school coach was the guy who I became closest with. And he was fantastic. He was a teacher at school. And basketball was the hook, right, for us to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And then we would get into other subjects, whether it was academics or, social life or things that you got to stay away from as a young man. And I think my mom and him had a lot of talks, and I think he knew that he was somebody who had great influence over me and tried to be a very good role model, and he was. And so I credit my CYO coaches, my high school coach, and then obviously – I spent a lot of time with Tom Thibodeau because he was the assistant coach for a couple of years. Then he became the head coach.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear those names. And Mike Jarvis, I've always been an admirer of him from a distance. I don't know Mike, but I like how his teams play. You got the opportunity to be a GA on his staff, and then you went to Brown, I think, after that. But tell us about working with Coach Jarvis and what he was like to you, giving you an opportunity to coach in Boston and, being at home and having an opportunity to coach at the college level.
It was so exciting. I graduated from Salem State, and I coached at Salem State for a couple of years. Tom Thibodeau left. I coached with another gentleman by the name of Dana Skinner. Dana was a great player. Dana Skinner, that name?
I remember that name, yeah.
He was a great player out of New England, and he actually was on the Celtics for a while. coached with him, and then I went to another Division III school called Suffolk University with a gentleman by the name of Jim Nelson, who's maybe one of the most respected coaches in all of New England basketball. He's retired now. So I got great mentors, and then, I begged Mike Jarvis to be his volunteer coach. I mean, that's what I did. So I'm 26 years old. I'm still living at home. Coaching Division III ball, I'm substitute teaching during the day in the Boston public school system, and I'm coaching at Division III. Then I go to BU, and I beg Coach Jarvis to be the volunteer. And he was gracious enough to take me on. I showed him that persistency, that willingness to do any job imaginable, and the passion for the job, and he taught me so much about the little things, the big things. And you're right, he was fabulous to be around. He treated people so well, whether it was his players or people at Boston University. And he was a really smart coach. And Buck in practice, man, he was a tough dude. Like, he would get on those guys. And, when he got on them back then, you got a little nervous because he had a fire about him. But he was really intelligent. And then off the court, he was just a total gentleman. And he's the guy, Buck, who took me from Division III to Division I. Now, there was no pay involved. When I say there was nothing. But I'll tell you what he did. Obviously he tried to feed me whenever we could. And I would show up to Boston University about 2:30 every day after teaching school till 11 o'clock at night. And then I'd be there on the weekend. So at the end of my first year with him, and I only spent 1 year, but he took care of all my travel, and he got me tickets to the Final Four in 1989. That was my reward. That was my pay. That was my first Final Four because of Mike Jarvis. I couldn't afford to fly there. I couldn't afford anything. Couldn't afford the ticket. He bought it all for me and said, "Here, thank you." And I'll never forget that.
That's good stuff. Well, we're gonna take a short break. We'll come right back. We're chopping it up with Buck and Coach Paul Biancardi. We'll be right back.
Many people are looking for natural alternatives to help ease their aches and pains. Begin stopping the pain with the help of Pain Stopper. Formulated by healthcare providers, Pain Stopper helps alleviate a variety of physical ailments so you can get back to doing what you love. Our products are triple independently lab tested to ensure the highest quality hemp available. Visit PainStopCBD.com for more information. Pain Stopper, because why manage pain when you can stop it?
At Heslop Wealth Advisors, our goal is to help small businesses develop quality retirement plans for their employees through our Lunch and Learn seminars. We provide lunch and learning tools to help your company succeed and unmatched customer service.
All right, we're back with Coach Paul Biancardi. And, Coach, I call you Coach because everybody does, right? When you become a coach, that's the mantra that you get. So you talked about Mike Jarvis before the break. But one guy I'm really interested in hearing more about is Rick Majerus. I mean, I've heard so many stories about Coach Majerus. Now, you were at Wright State coaching. You were a head coach. And then things happened there and you had to leave. You chose to leave Wright State. Tell us a little bit about the transition from leaving Wright State and then going to work with Coach Rick Majerus. Excuse me.
Yeah, Rick Majerus at that time, Buck, was, an iconic figure. He was, no pun intended, larger than life.
Yeah.
As he would say, he would never be a 42 regular on a suit jacket. But one of the great teachers of the game. I got a team in Utah to the 98 championship game against Kentucky and almost pulled it off. He was on his way to I believe, the Hall of Fame until his death. About 7 years after St. Louis. But I was done at Wright State and looking for a job. And Rick Majerus just got the St. Louis job. But the way we connected was so cool because everybody says it's all about relationships. Well, it's about meeting people, treating people well, and with respect and kindness. So my assistant coach, his name was Brian Donaher. His dad was Don Donaher, the longtime famous head coach at Dayton. So him and Rick Majerus are great friends. I'm a head coach at Wright State. Rick Majerus working at ESPN at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
He comes in at Dayton and says to Don Donaher, to visit Don Donaher, and he says, hey, I want to go over and see Wright State practice where your son is. Call that Biancardi guy and see if I can get in. All right, yeah, you can get in. So not only did he come in, but he comes in with a yellow pad of paper.
Mm-hmm.
I never met him before. He goes, hey, I just want to watch practice. I'm going to take a few notes. I'm like, okay, I don't know what you're probably going to learn what not to do, not what to do. I mean, I was nervous because here's Rick Majerus watching my practice and taking notes. I asked if he would talk to the team after and just send a message, which he did. He was very gracious. So that's how we met. He came to practice. Practice was over. He told me what he saw in practice, spoke to the team. Of course, we went out and got something to eat. That's part of the ritual. And, so we met then. We hit it off then. And then, 3 or 4 years later, he's got the St. Louis job. And I'm looking for a job, and he hired me.
Now, Coach, what would you do differently if you could go back to Wright State? What would be different for you if you could do that all over again?
Just in terms of being a head coach.
Yeah, what would you do differently as a head coach and just the whole experience?
Yeah, I felt that I was really well groomed, Buck. Mm-hmm. I spent 14 years, 7 at Boston College, 6 at Ohio State. We had some really great years, Elite Eights, Final Fours. But you know this, no matter how much you prepare for something, you're never ready for it until you step into that role. I think one thing I would do is probably delegate a little bit more. I think when you're a first-time head coach, you want to control every decision that goes on in your program, and things that don't have to do with winning. What color uniforms do you want to pick out? Just things that really don't have a big difference in your program. I was so attention to detail that I wanted to be involved with every decision of everything, and it's so exhausting. So I hired a great staff. I should have delegated a little bit more. If I ever do it again, I would definitely be able to delegate more so, because that frees you up as a head coach to make those really big, important decisions and put your focus where winning matters most.
Yeah, and you talked about the Ohio State experience. I didn't want to gloss over that, but I know you had a really good run there as well. And all of those things seem to prepare you for the coaching side, but also now in recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're at that level, you consider yourself a good evaluator, but when I got to ESPN and took that position of the recruiting director, which Tom Luganville has for the football side, all we do is evaluate prospects, and we put them on a big board. And I thought I was a good evaluator then. I'm actually so much better today as I was back then, because that's all I do for the most part, 24/7, is watch players either live or on film and break down their tendencies. So being at Ohio State, being at Boston College, being a head coach at Wright State, St. Louis, it really helped me get the job. That resume in the game helped me tremendously when I applied for the job. And it's funny how I got the job, Buck. My college teammate at Salem State was neighbors with the person who was making the decision.
Oh, wow.
So again, you talk about relationships. So me and my guy, right, me and my boy, we're teammates, and we're friends for 20 years. The job came open. I was talking to him about it, and he goes, that's my neighbor. My neighbor's making that decision then. Let me talk to him.
Wow.
So and I treated that my friend, he was younger than me, so it was like my little brother that I never had. And 20 years later, the blessing came back.
Now, the one thing that we also have to talk about with COVID and everything else, we've seen all the things that have happened. The NBA just the other day, just basically postponing and canceling games because of the situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Before that, the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. How would you, as a coach now, and even now when you talk to some of these kids, how do you have those conversations with some of these young men that are struggling? Because a lot of the kids in basketball are kids of color. The kids are African-American kids. They grew up in the streets, maybe not in the place where you grew up, but something similar. How would you juxtapose those things now with these kids when you talk to them now, or if you were a coach currently?
That's a great question. First of all, I had to get more educated myself. I can sit here and say a lot of things that have already been said that are good things, but they weren't good enough. And and you know me pretty well, so you know my background now, and you know me. But saying that you're not a racist and saying that you have black friends doesn't mean anything. I thought it meant something, but it doesn't. So the only thing that I would want to do is educate, which I have myself over the course of time since this has begun. And then I would take that education and transfer to our players if I was coaching a team, and really dive deep into the history of racism, dive deep into what respect really means and how important it is to move forward in your life. I try to give them as many lessons as I can about racism, respect, and just being a good human being. Basketball, getting back to those days that you brought me back to, I'm on the court and, I know this guy's black and this guy's Puerto Rican and this guy is another race, but I didn't see that as a basketball player. You were either on my team or you're on the other team. And so basketball really, really never let me see color. It never let me see ethnicity. It never made me see rich or poor. It's one of the beautiful things that basketball did and sports can do for somebody, is because, when you're on that football field, you're with your brothers. On the basketball field, I'm with my guys. I don't see anything but my guys.
And I guess the thing is, when growing up in Boston's had some history of racial inequality and some racism. How did you square that up when you went home and talked to people? Because you had been out recruiting in people's homes with parents and kids that you got to know and love and have, like, these were your kids. But if you heard something that you knew wasn't right, how did you square that up, or how did you approach that? Yeah,
when I grew up, there was race. There's been racism for hundreds of years, but all the stuff that's been happening in our society currently, it made me think back to when I was a kid and how evident racism was back then. And basketball was great. It didn't allow me to see it, but I knew it was there. And then as you go on and you get into your profession, you learn that it was bad back then. And you try to teach the guys that you're coaching to never see color and to always treat people with love and respect and kindness. And, on the basketball court, you got to be one way, but off the basketball court, you got to be this way on campus, this way in society. And someday you're going to have a job and a family. So I was constantly trying to help our kids see the big picture in everything that they were going through. And, Boston College is a place where predominantly it's white. So we had some black kids from Detroit, and they didn't feel very comfortable there. But,
I understand.
I brought them around the city, downtown, showed them that there was plenty of people that were black and of different races as well, because it's a very international city, as you know.
It is.
It is. So, I've always just tried to educate whoever I was coaching, recruiting, or trying to give advice to, and I was trying to always give the right message and look at the big picture.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted, if we change gears a little bit, when you think of the AAU circuit, right? What can be done in that area? Because as good as it is, and you and I have talked about this before, but I know you have some great thoughts on it. What can help change the culture of AAU to make it, I don't even know the word to use, but just make it better? Like even now, like the health and safety is not as targeted as it should be. There are things that are happening in that environment, but there's so many other things that you can look at. It's great because these kids get exposure, they get a chance to play, but there's so many kids that don't make it in the AAU culture. What are your thoughts on that, and how would you change it, or what are some of the things you thought, hey, this could be better for our game?
Well, first of all, it'd be great if they could practice more, because they don't get a lot of time to practice before games. That's why the games, when you go there as coaches or evaluators, you see it's kind of raggedy. Well, they don't get a lot of chance to practice, and they're usually taking the best guys from different programs and putting them on a team. So you don't have a lot of chemistry. You don't have chemistry sometimes. You don't have practice. And so the games don't look as organized or as intense, maybe as a high school game. And speaking of intensity, the summer basketball circuit has blossomed so much over the years that sometimes kids could play 2 games a day, 3 games in a day. And I think that really hurts their competitiveness. It's great that they love it and they want to play, but when you're playing that first 30, you got another game at 2 o'clock. So losing doesn't hurt as much. When you play a high school game on Tuesday night, you don't play again until Friday. So there's a greater meaning in my mind. Not that it means more, but it just, you don't get that chance to get that game back. And you guys in football are a great example. You play once a week.
No, when you talk about your transition from coaching to ESPN, tell us about that, because I think people always think you finish playing and then you walk right into the booth. How was that for you, and what did that look like, and how did it all come about?
Well, again, I was coaching at St. Louis with Rick Majerus, and the job opened up. A friend of mine from college was friends with the person doing the hiring.
Yeah.
So I fit a profile of a coach. They wanted somebody who coached at the high majors or was a head coach. So I had both of those parts of my resume. But I wasn't really looking to leave. I loved being with Rick Majerus. At times, he could be very combustible. He could be very combative. And at times, he could be very caring, too. But I didn't have any feeling to leave. I wanted to be a coach again or stay as an assistant. But when I got offered the job, it was a ground floor. They just started this in basketball. Tommy Luganbill had the football job. And it was a pretty big job they put together at the time. Looked at it, thought about it, talked to my wife about it, and even talking to Coach Majerus, he said, hey, you can come back and be an assistant coach anytime you want in the game. But this may be an opportunity, may never come again. So he actually opened my eyes to it a little bit more, decided to take it, and here I am today talking to you, and it's opened doors for me. It's had me meet incredible people that you and I have both met at ESPN. Yeah. Me meeting you, I consider you one of those people that is like, I'm so happy and proud to have known you then and now. I mean, we develop a relationship. That would have never happened. I mean, ESPN opened a lot of doors for me, just meeting people. I got to tell you, though, I mean, you understand this being a former great player. Corporate America wasn't my speed when I walked through the door, though. It was too, us coaches like things, black and white, right?
Yeah.
I don't like it gray, and I don't like double talk, and I don't like politics. So I had to work my way through those weeds the first couple of years.
Hey, Coach B, has there ever been anybody that you've had as a producer or a director, or even, I know Bud Morgan helped me tremendously, but who has helped you develop on that side? Because it's a different technique and style you have to develop.
No question about it. Yes, you never got straight answers because it's corporate America. But I broke those barriers down with the people that I worked with, and it became a great relationship. Yeah, I had Bud Morgan as well. He was fabulous. The first time he critiqued me, he ripped me so hard, and he went through all the negative things. Same thing, right? And I'm sitting there with a pen and paper, and I'm writing it down, taking notes. And I'm saying as I'm writing, I'm saying, I got no shot in this profession. I'm not going to make it. Then he paused and he said, but you can be very good, and so, that rough voice. So he broke you down. He built you up almost like a coach. He was very helpful back then. Dan Stair, who once came over at ESPNU, I was friends with him from when I was coaching. He was very good to me. Sean Murphy, who's there today, has really taken time away from his job to give me some really great feedback and great advice about being an analyst. So I think those guys have really spent time trying to make me better, and I'm grateful for that.
I think when you have those guys and you really talk to them and tell them, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Because sometimes they don't know, because I think they've had folks that don't understand hard coaching or coaching from that standpoint. And when I know Murph and JV and all those guys, when you tell them, hey, this is what I need, and then they send you to Bud, and Bud makes you write, like, on your yellow notepad, 5 pages of notes, and then at the end he will tell you, but hey, I think you can be good at this. And I agree with you. It's so nice when you have somebody that's honest with you, but they also have your best interests. And I think that's what we like as being players, but also as coaches as well.
No question about it.
Now, Coach, tell me this. When you look at today's coach and you look at today's player, what are the couple of things that they need? I know one thing I've heard you say is be a listener. Coaches, when I grew up, they just told you what to do, and you didn't have this whole, I got to tell you my side of it. It's, okay, I want to bust him in his face, but I'm going to do what he says, and then afterwards he may love on you. But it ain't going to be love right there. It's going to be tough love. What do the players, like from your perspective, now that you're out talking to these players, you see these players, what is it that they need, or what is it that you would have to do as a coach to be better as far as a listener and whatever else, other things you'd have to do?
I think we're in Generation Z right now. And that's to the adolescent. I think for all coaches to coach today's player, you have to care as people before you can coach them as players.
Okay.
And I think that's so important. Now, a lot of coaches say they understand that, but you just can't care on the surface, Buck. You got to dig deep inside to their background, their family, everything and anything you can know about them. I think that's how you get to coach today's player. You got to care before you coach. It's about relationships. You build that trust, which builds belief, and then the results, for the court or the field come after that. As a coach, I think you have to break down the why today. Like you said, coaches back in the 70s and 80s, maybe even early 2000s, do what I say, don't do as I do. And, it's my way or you're taking the highway. Well, today, if you have that approach, you're going to be taking the highway as a coach.
That's true.
You have to tell them what to do, but you have to break down the why, because Generation Z today, when they look at us, me and you, and anybody else that's an adult, they're asking themselves, who is this person? What's his credentials? So you have to give them the why and then show them how to do everything. And I think coaches, in the past might have just said what to do. They might not have broke down the why, taken the time to do that, maybe not show them how to do it. And maybe they cared, but they didn't show that they cared. And you gotta take action as a coach and really invest your time in caring about your players. And that's how you get the most out of them. Because if you don't, they're gonna hit that snooze button on you. And once they hit that snooze button, the players, you lose your team. You've done games. You see a team get blown out, and you say to yourself, how did that happen? The talent's pretty equal. Well, did they not play hard? No. They're shut off from their coach. They hit the snooze button. Yeah. Once the relationship is not there anymore, kids aren't gonna play.
Tell me one of your better recruiting stories, or a couple of them, where you had a kid that he was hard to get to. First off, secondly, you got him to your place. It might have been a little rocky to start, but you were able to see this kid graduate, go on, have major success in either basketball or a whole nother sport.
Yeah, I think the best story I'll tell you real quick is I'm the head coach at Wright State. I get the job in April. I go right to Detroit, which I had great success in. We had a young man by the name of Howard Isley play for us at Boston College. He played in the NBA for a while. Now he's Jawan Howard's assistant. So I recruit this kid, Deshaun Wood. He becomes the best freshman in the Horizon League, and 4 years later he became the player of the year in the Horizon League. And I landed him late in the signing period because he didn't have his academics in order. But, evaluating him when I was at Ohio State helped me when I got the Wright State job because I knew he was available. And I also developed relationships with people in Detroit that said, hey, as soon as I got the job, they said, you got to recruit Deshaun Wood. He's available, and he's one of the best players in Detroit. So, again, the way you treat people, it comes back to you sometime in your life. It may not come back right away. We've developed a great bond. His mother died during his 4 years, and can you imagine how, to coach a player, his mother passes, and then, you're trying to help him graduate. You're trying to help him get back on track basketball-wise. That's what a lot of people, fans, boosters don't understand what it's like to be with your players day to day. It's not just practice and go home.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great story. Now, Who was the one that made the decision? Because I always know, I've heard it's the mom, the grandmother, or the matriarch of the family generally is the one that has the sign off to say, yeah. The dad will do a lot of talking, but the moms usually are the ones that say, what's the best meal you had? Or one, you probably had so many of them. But tell me about that, because you can go in anywhere, Coach. I know you can talk to them and feel comfortable, and they'll feel comfortable with you. I love to hear those stories about recruiting and getting to the mother of this kid or getting to the grandmother and getting them comfortable with sending their child to you.
Yeah, with Deshaun, it was actually Deshaun made his own decision in many ways. Okay. His mother and father were not together, and his dad just really approved him making the decision to come to Wright State. So I knew there was no button pusher, as I would like to say, that nobody was going to push the button. It was Deshaun making up his own mind. And so that you have to know that going into recruiting. Who is the person around the prospect that is going to be the most influential? Because you're right. It could be a mom. It could be a dad. It could be a grandmother. There's always somebody in that recruiting circle. And I like to call that circle the 360. You better know everybody who's around that prospect. I recruited a young man by the name of Scooney Penn. He was great for us at Boston College. When we went to Ohio State, he came with us, led us to a Final Four. He's now coaching the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, Scooney, you had to know that his mom was instrumental in his life, but his grandmother had to approve everything. And so I spent probably more time with his grandmother than I did with his mom, because his mom was working all the time. She was a single mother. His grandmother was around all the time, so she was the one who was so influential with Scooney. He would even say, I really want to come here, but you got to convince my grandmother that Boston College is a good place. And we went to Ohio State, and he came with us. And he was a Big Ten Player of the Year. How about this one, Buck? He was the Rookie of the Year in the Big East, and he transferred to Ohio State, and he was the Big Ten Player of the Year. Pretty good career.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, Coach, they always say a coach's wife is the one that makes them. I know, if I've heard you talk about your wife and your family and your kids. I know you're really close, but what difference has your wife made on you throughout the course of your coaching career and now raising a family? I think it's always fascinating when you've grown up with your mom as a single mom, and then you don't really know how to raise kids. You don't have a book, just like anything else. But our wives seem to bring out the best in us if we allow them to. Tell us about that relationship with your wife and how that's helped you become a better coach, a better person, a better, Christian, all those things that we strive for.
Yeah, she's done all those things. And the way we met is really another great story. I'm the grad assistant at Boston College. Again, I have no money, right? I'm 28 years old. I owe about 20 grand to credit cards.
Oh man!
I'm going to school full time, and I'm coaching in the Big East though, and I'm living off adrenaline. So, needless to say, didn't have any social life. So, my wife at the time when I was at Boston College, she was the head coach of the women's soccer team.
Oh, okay.
So she was single. I'm single. We're in those athletic department meetings. And so, we noticed each other, and we had some coaching friends put us together, and it's an unbelievable story. So we meet at Boston College, we got engaged, we got married, and we had our first child, and we're both coaching at Boston College. I'm with basketball for 7 years. She's the head women's soccer coach. Engaged, married, and had our first child. It was an awesome experience. One that, we both cherish to this day. And she comes from a small town. I don't even know if it's a town, but it's a small area in Texas. But she grew up on 800 acres on a ranch, and I grew up on the inner city. So we couldn't have been any different.
Where at in Texas? Where did she grow up?
It's near Hearn. It's near Hearn.
That's way east. Yeah.
It's in the middle of, it's like the witness protection program where she grew up. It's middle of nowhere.
Is it going on I-20 heading out towards the Louisiana-Texas border out that way? Or is it more
headed towards Texas A&M?
Oh, okay. So you're in Hearn. So you're in between Bryan College Station Okay, exactly. Oh man, she's out in the middle, and that's a lot of land out there.
A lot of land, and you're right. Everything you said. I mean, she was really, and I say this all the time. She was a coach, so she understood what I was doing, and that helped us be very compatible. And we got along so well. We had the same schedule. She understood my coaching career, and obviously I understood hers. And I think that's what really, put us together and kept us together because, without her, I would have never been able to, make progress in the coaching profession while being married. She never put any demands on me because every time I had to do something for the program, she understood. She gave up her head coaching job, job at Boston College. So she sacrificed for the good of my career and for our family. And she definitely made me a better man. She definitely made me a better Christian. So in many ways, I hope she's not listening to this because then I'm going to have to owe her.
I wasn't trying to get that to happen, but,
No, but
I'm
going to tell you what, Buck, a professional person, an incredible wife, unbelievable mother. I mean, God couldn't have blessed me with a better person.
That's great. That's great. Well, Coach, what we like to do at the very I got to go to a break. My producer is screaming in my ear. So let's go to a quick break. We'll come right back with Coach Paul Biancardi. We'll be right back.
Many people are looking for natural alternatives to help ease their aches and pains. Begin stopping the pain with the help of Pain Stopper. Formulated by healthcare providers, Pain Stopper helps alleviate a variety of physical ailments so you can get back to doing what you love. Our products are triple independently lab tested to ensure the highest quality hemp available. Visit painstopcbd.com for more information. Pain Stopper, because why manage pain when you can stop it?
All right, we're back with Coach Paul Biancardi. Hey, while we were in the break, and I was a producer who we both know, but that's a whole other story. We talked a little bit about this during the break. Your mom's 91. Your dad came back into your life. Mine did as well. And I think that's important to kind of pay off because so often you hear of situations where the father never comes back around. And there's no reconciliation for those parties. But it sounds like with you had that. You were able to get close to your father, me as well. Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, he left when I was 7. They split up. And then about 17, when I was in high school, I started to see him a little bit more often. And then as I got older, we started to communicate more. But, my mother did a great thing. She never held my father against me or me against my father. She always said, look, we don't get along, but that's your dad. And, she was so good in that respect when I look back at it, because a lot of parents don't do that. They've kind of, they do things to maybe pit their child against the other parent. And I'm so grateful my mom didn't do that. I don't think any parent should. My dad, a lot of people say, oh, my dad's my best friend. Well, he wasn't. My dad showed me what to do. He didn't, but he showed me what not to do. And, but I feel bad for him, Buck, because he never met her ever. And obviously he never met his own grandfather. So how could he be a dad? If you don't meet your own dad and you don't learn from him and you never met your grandfather, it's kind of hard to become a father. And so I don't blame him for that at all. And it took me a while to understand it. And it took me a while. Now I was pretty upset with him, right? Because he left when I was young. But I realized that as I got older and became more experienced in the world, we all kind of got together again on a good platform.
I always used to see the things, how to not be bitter, but get better. And I think that's kind of how I look at my dad and I's relationship. As we grew older, we got better. There was some bitterness. There was some, and I'm stubborn like him. So I know that to a fault. He had his father in his life. So I would, you deal with that. But I think the best thing is if you can make those relationships and repair those relationships, you get better. And it's not going to be completely absolved, but when he left, he loved you, you loved him. And that's the most important thing. Hey, Coach, we do a little thing at the very end called 2-minute drill. And it's just some quick questions. So, this is the fun part. It's actually football, but you're going to score. So however you want to look at it. It could be
About
the end of the game. Oh, yeah, we always let you score. So here's
just stick with the New England Patriots and I'll get it right.
Well, here's a couple questions. What music do you like? What do you listen to? What's in your Apple Music, your device when you're jamming tunes?
Buck, there's nothing in my Apple tunes. I am literally a basketball junkie. I listen to music, but I don't have it downloaded yet.
Okay.
But I love music from the 80s and 90s.
Okay, yeah, it can be a genre because I'm kind of
I'm
like
a disco
that
guy, man. I used to hang out, me and John Travolta at the disco. I used to wear those big bell-bottom pants.
Are you in the roller rink with the little long bottom pants?
I was in the disco.
Staying alive. I love it. Hey, I love the disco era, but I'm an R&B guy. But we can connect on that one. We can work with it. So X and O wise, when you're pressing, what's the most important part of the press?
Pressure on the ball. Put pressure on the inbounder. I think that's the most important thing. And when you trap and you press, don't foul, because it negates the whole idea of putting pressure on somebody else. You build them out.
One other thing too, when you look at today's game, elbow or mid-range jumpers were key, but now everybody's shooting threes. How do you defend that if you're coaching and when you talk to coaches now that are really good defenders against the long ball in today's basketball?
I think you really have to take their airspace away. When you think you're close enough to a shooter, I think you got to think again and get closer. It's important that you run guys off the three-point line, take their airspace away, and then obviously you got to protect the rim. I'm still a fan, Buck, of shooting the mid-range jump shot because I know the analytics tell you no, but I also like if you're a good mid-range shooter like Kawhi Leonard and you got the field goal percentage from mid-range, I still think it's a good play in the game.
I agree with you. One other thing. Give me two stats that if you win those stats, you win a ball game.
Turnovers. If you have less than 12 turnovers, I think you're going to win that game. And defensive field goal percentage, less than 40% for the other team, I think you have a shot. So if you don't make mistakes and you really defend at a high level, I think you got a chance to win every single game.
Hey, that's a long mid-range jumper for Coach Paul Biancardi. He gets it done. He scores. We win the ball game. Hey, Coach, it's been great catching up with you. We got to do it again, and I want to do it live. See, this is the whole goal. We do it here where we're at a distance, we're zooming and all that good stuff, but at some point, chopping it up with Buck, we're going to sit down in a restaurant. If you drink, have a drink of choice, but if you don't drink, you can have soda, tea, whatever, and we just sit down and do this again because it's so much fun. And I got to pick your brain about basketball because that's the stuff we used to talk about all the time when we sit at ESPNU. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining us.
Buck, thanks for having me. And yes, no excuses. We got to get together live.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Mike Gardner, founder of Thin Energy, the wellness energy that delivers each and every time.
In 6 weeks that I've been taking Thin Energy, I feel fantastic.
I lost 7 pounds in the first week.
You just squeeze it in, you take a shot, and you're done.
Get your drinks, get you hype, get you ready.
I feel great.
Jump on, try Thin Energy.
Drink it, live it.
Many people are looking for natural alternatives to help ease their aches and pains. Begin stopping the pain with the help of Pain Stopper. Formulated by healthcare providers, Pain Stopper helps alleviate a variety of physical ailments so you can get back to doing what you love. Our products are triple independently lab tested to ensure the highest quality hemp available. Visit PainStopCBD.com for more information. Pain Stopper, because why manage pain when you can stop it?
At Heslop Wealth Advisors, our goal is to help small businesses develop quality retirement plans for their employees through our Lunch and Learn seminars. We provide lunch and learning tools to help your company succeed and unmatched customer service.